where I talk about it again. I said, well, people used to ask me to find them stuff. And I was like, no, especially if like, the places where I bought it were nearby or you could buy something like it nearby. No. So they said I should have been willing to buy things. And that was what led to an issue. Again, everything's an issue now. We're talking about a shirt that I bought, I think, in 2004 or 5, because I definitely had it by 2006. So we're talking about 20 something years ago. But this is what they said this was supposed to be. Like, over the years, they didn't like my sense of fashion. That's a lie. They always liked my sense of fashion, which is partly why they would ask me to buy them things. And they admit that. Then they jumped to a story about something that happened in 1997. And they said, I didn't do what they claimed I did, but I was, and the person admitted it, but I was willing to go far with the story. And they said, I don't understand that I'm not allowed, you hear this, I'm not allowed to say these things or do these things, but they wanted to put me on camera. First of all, I'm the person who put me on camera. They said, these videos go out and they'll be forever. People will see who I am. And that's exactly why I want to do it this way. I want you to see, I sleep with this now. They said, well, when I was with my ex-boyfriend, I can say his name because like I said, we loved each other. I didn't always sleep with this on. I don't always sleep with, this is the way they speak. Never, always. So what they want to do is then say, you can't always say this or you can't never say this. Here's the problem with going back 20, 30, 40, 50 years of things. They weren't there. So what I wanted to tell you that's really important that what they said was them doing it. They thought this was going to make it seem like they were credit for things. No, this channel is to chronicle them doing this. In 2019, when I ended the old channel, which would be for everyone, and started a channel for this. And I don't want children on this channel. This is for hopefully Gen Xers who went through this or went through something similar to this, which I think happened or is happening too. Anyway, so going back to them talking about when I was a child, again, I'll say over 40 years ago, because I don't know exactly when, they said there was a woman who was white who was doing this. So we're trying to find out who started this. So they just said something about, tell them about the Irish. I don't know what that refers to. But then they said, no, it was a Jewish woman. So my point becomes, it seems like, and if you look, there's a male voice, and this Shamega or Mika, because that way the elementary school mate's message where she called me, hey, Meek, and I called and said, don't refer to me as that. That's how they think. They think that they can popularize doing something and it makes it okay. She's never called me Meek throughout our friendship, ever. So they said that started the whole idea of using the word meek for people. And that's part of this whole thing. To me, it's about making society meek. And they take it in a religious way. All of a sudden they say, the meek shall inherit the earth, right? So you notice how they switch to a religious way. I don't want a society of meek people. I want a society of proud, strong people who speak up. So we are on totally different, we got totally different thought processes. Mine is you speak up, see something, say something. They have a different process of we're going to beat you down so that you stop talking. We're going to teach children not to speak. So going back to what they're talking about, where they think that this channel will be, they said an us channel or a we channel. It's not. It's a me channel chronicling them. They use the phrasing them versus me repeatedly. They said, tell them about the enemy. You are the enemy for doing this to me. And then switching it around to make it look like I'm involved. There is no way I would do this. We have totally different thought process on life. I speak up. I tell things. So they said, well, why didn't you tell them about the man you met in 2016? It's in public. Oh, they act like this was an escort service. It wasn't. I'm not an escort. But that was their thought process. No, they're lying again. And I'm not going to spread their lies. And I've done this in other videos. When you lie, I'm not going to repeat any of it because it's a lie. But it goes to show I'm not schizophrenic and hearing voices. There's someone talking to me in this direction. Then sometimes in this direction. Then sometimes in this direction, which is why they can't lie and say I'm schizophrenic or mentally ill. Unfortunately, you can say I'm getting sick again. It doesn't last long when I'm not. Usually, if I'm not doing a live, I can just end the video before this starts. But this is who they are. And I need to show you that. That's how, when they say we need, I'm going to tell you now what I need, because what I need isn't getting out there through them. Different thought processes. So going back to how they were putting all this together, they said they're going to put all this together. They said when they said something about sorry for you. I don't know what that's referring to. Anyway, I don't want you guys to sit through me doing this like this because it's hard. But I need you to know what they're talking about. I can't pause this like I normally would. They just said it's hard. Oh, yeah, it's hard. Okay, going back, because I don't want to end the live. Going back to how they wanted to make every little thing that happens in my life a bigger deal than it is. That's part of the process. If everything's a big deal 20, 30 years later, then I would have to feel like they want me to feel. But if that's not the case, I wish I could pause this and get my voice back, but I cannot not do it. So you notice that when this starts, my eyes start to run because it's like my body is fighting. And they said, oh, that could be why. They just said that. You look like you're crying. I don't know why that happens. There have been times when my nose starts to run, my eyes start to run, and I don't know why. I don't know why. The other big thing they said, so they said they exonerated me from the 1997 incident, which wasn't an incident. It was a stupid story I told the elementary schoolmate that became an incident. So what they're admitting now is that they set me up so another person can hear what I'm saying and make confusion. I know that. And I believe that. That's what this is. And you're seeing it happening. So I'm talking to you when they're talking behind me, and they said that's what they want these videos to look like. So these videos that they say don't look the way they want them to look actually do. It looks like I'm having a conversation, then out of nowhere someone pops up and starts adding a comment. They said they're 2 cents. Adding a comment, well, I think that was supposed to be what they thought I was going to say, which gets so confusing. Whenever I do it this way, it's confusing to me. Even when I be watching, it's like, oh, that's what they thought I would say. Okay, so the 2 cents was what they thought I would say. Then they just said that's what the grandmother's generation would say. No, I think this is just how they wanted to look like I'm mentally ill by making it seem like I'm throwing my voice in different directions and saying things that I wasn't going to say. Anyway, let's get back to this, because they'll get me all off topic, and I will be trying to go back on another video and say, well, this was what happened. Okay. Someone just said in a different, higher pitch, younger sounding voice. The one that said 2 cents sounded older. This person's voice sounded much younger. And she said, you were right about something. I don't know what was I right or the older person? Was I right? I don't know. So going back to the so-called incident it was just a story that something happened in my 1997 training class for what was then 9X. So they said, or the male voice said earlier, that this is what they want to show how nasty I am. Oh, I can be nasty. And I want to show that part of me also. But they said, no, I'm usually not nasty. So now they argue with whether I'm nasty or not. They said, I want to look nasty. What I want to do is, like I said, I want to go back to the grandparents' generation of being tough women who weren't always being taken advantage of, violence against us. Because what would happen back in those days when I was growing up was if something like this was happening to someone, those people would talk about it. They wouldn't keep it secret, which is what this was about, hitting me in the head. Oh, we're going to make you keep this secret. So they said, I don't look good. They said, I look like a punk because instead of running around accusing everybody, I'm doing it legally. Well, I've said this before. They said I put it on court records. That's part of it. Something that really changed things for me was going over the 1992 John Sinclair Ackley versus NSA court records. It laid this out so well. Then there were other people, videos, and they did it the right way. And they just said something about the civil rights movement. Meaning all the ways that I've seen successful people seek justice successfully has been this way. And by doing it this way, instead of them being able to say, well, look, she sounds nuts. She's talking to herself and correcting herself with different language and angry with herself. No. Later, I can refer back to the 2019 videos or the 2022 videos. And I can they said I can be, that would not be someone hearing voices. That's someone being spoken to. Because back when I was a kid, if you're talking and somebody is talking as you're talking, you would say, what did he just say? What was that? That's how we spoke. The other big thing is they were saying that they wanted to make this seem like it's me talking. So they would vibrate certain areas of my face. Who would know how to do that? So they just said, something like this was all we were talking about. But you can see my face isn't vibrating. It's the illness that they created that you see. So they said these are false movements. They said it's all not, they just said it's all not false. Just when they think it's false, it's false. Okay. So let me just go. You notice they don't want me to stay on the topic that we're talking about as I was waking up. They want me to switch topics. I can't. I gotta stay on this topic. The topic is that if they can put these stories together, even if it's years later, they can come up with a personality trait. So they said when I was a child, they don't know what year, but definitely, I would say over 40 years ago. We'll do it like that. We'll do 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, because it's too hard going back and forth. So over 40 years ago, I was exonerated because I wasn't telling secrets. I was talking about something else. I was exonerated from the 1997 story. We got a date for that. So we're talking about almost 30 years ago. So even though that's within the 20 something year age range, I'll put it in the 30 year ago range. So almost 30 years ago, I was exonerated, but they said they set me up. That was part of how this was supposed to work, because the setup was to make it seem like they said, I think when I was talking, they yelled out, "You're always starting trouble for us." They heard us. So to make it seem like I'm a troublemaker. The story about the shirt is from about 20 something years ago. And they said that in the video, I shouldn't have said that people always wanted to ask me to buy them something that they liked that I was wearing. They said that they wanted to make it seem like I wasn't good at dressing. And they go back to a story from about, say, 95, 96, so 30 years ago, when I had a college friend who was a very good dresser. And they wanted to take me shopping because they didn't like my outfit. That wasn't what happened at all. But that's how they saw that as, meaning that was their view of that I wasn't a good dresser. And they said something, please don't, something, I can't hear, that came from this direction. So they saw it as I wasn't a good dresser. And then so by talking about what happened when I worked at Saks, I can say it was Saks Fifth Avenue, and people like what I was wearing. It makes it seem like I was a good dresser. So they're comparing how the people saw me dressing at Saks with how when I was hanging out with my college friend, people saw me. Nothing to do with the other. One thing has nothing to do with the other. So now we go to the shirt story. So the fact that they said in the video that they thought I was trying to make it seem like this shirt was from an expensive boutique, I would have Saks Fifth Avenue. If it had been expensive, the people there would have known it, which is partly why these stories make sense to people who know what I'm referring to. It was definitely an inexpensive shirt. I was not trying to sound like, they just used the word bougie. No, not even. I was not trying to pass it off as an expensive shirt, which goes back to the original story. At Saks Fifth Avenue, the people know their clothing like this. Seriously. You could be wearing anything, and you go up to any sales associate, and they could say, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so, and so-and-so. They know the clothes. So there's no way anyone would have thought I was trying to sound like I'm being pushy. That wasn't who the people thought I was. Maybe the people doing this thought that, or wanted to make the other people think that. That's a lie. Anybody who knows me knows. So it's hard now for them to lie once you put the names in of the places, and once they just fill in the blanks. It's harder. Okay, so now let's go to the next story they talked about, which would have been, say, in about 2008. They said 2007, where that if it's a white person, I'll do it. If it's a black person, I want it. First of all, I want it. First of all, that has a whole lot in it, doesn't it? I'm not going to get into it because it's racial. And I don't think this has a lot to do with race. I didn't do it, obviously. Like I said, I don't want to work in a department store and run a side business in the department store where I work. That's part of this. Some of this is just, that wasn't who I was. That isn't who I am. I'm not going to go buying stuff for coworkers who work at Saks Fifth Avenue when they could buy it themselves. If you're working at Saks Fifth Avenue, let me just say this. If you're working at Saks Fifth Avenue, you can afford to buy something. I think the stuff was like at JCPenney's or at dollar stores. You don't need me to do it. And that's a big deal. And again, part of the story, these stories are for the people who know me, and they don't like that. They want to seem like we knew each other. We don't. They said something about getting something off the internet. I'm not sure what that is about. This will never seem like they know me because they wouldn't be doing it this way if they knew me. They said something about getting stuff off the internet. So they wanted to then, so they wanted to take the 2007, 2008, I'm not sure exactly when, they're not sure either, where someone keeps asking me to buy stuff. And then they said, well, maybe people didn't ask you earlier. You didn't talk about that. We're not going to talk about stuff you didn't talk about. This is how it has to work out. So then we're going to push it to when I started writing online, which would have been about 2008. And I started talking about these things and where you could buy things. So they said, well, I wasn't supposed to be able to do that because people weren't supposed to like the way I dressed. People liked the way I dressed throughout my life. It doesn't mean everybody would, but people did. So how I'm adding this up with what they're saying is I don't know, there's an older black woman's voice that said something, and she keeps using the word Mika, which isn't my name. So they said they wanted to popularize it as my name. That's not my name. Okay. Okay, I don't hear what they're saying, but they are talking in the background. So how this was supposed to all add up was that I can't hear what they're saying, but they're still talking. So I wanted to stop and say what they were saying, but I can't hear them. It was supposed to be like, I was always this person. I was always that person. And then never. And then when I use those same words, say you can't use it. So they said they have some of the best, highest paid lawyers watching my videos. So we went 40, 30, 20, and then we're going to a decade later, which would have been about 2016, 2017, where they jumped to someone who came into the boutique. So what does this all tie together? This seems to be something about them trying to surveil me and keep tracking everything that I'm doing and then use it years later against me when I wouldn't remember. They said how the dreams are supposed to work is that I'm supposed to think what they tell me, and I'm putting it in a different way. I think they want to terrorize and torture me into thinking what they tell me. So they said, this is why they put this, they just said, this is why they put this out all over New York State. I put it out all over the internet. They said, is that a ship? Yes, it is. That's darn one-upmanship. Okay, you give me a state, I'll give you a globe. So they said another thing that this was supposed to be is about scaring me about things like, this is going to happen to you if you do this. Which is part of what I'm saying. This is supposed to be that. We're going to keep threatening you, but not outwardly or outright. So they said in 1997, didn't that woman lay her hands on you? They just said that. Here we are again. You're supposed to be telling me this stuff. They said, how could we know this? They said, I put it out on the internet, so they're trying to help me. That's a lie. You move next to me. You mean you have the ability? Let's go over this. You have the ability to move next to someone you see on the internet, and there's a waiting list for these apartments. How did you? Oh, now we're quiet. Now we use we. Silence. They said, let's end it on that note. No, let's continue this. So part of this is they said, you heard that. That's a regular voice, not through this system. That was just someone yelling something out. He just said, yo. They admitted, this isn't my family. No, it's not my family. You hear that? That's a regular person talking. It's not through this weird recorded thing. It's a male voice. Someone just said about cancer. So here's what they're trying to do. Again, at the time, nobody talked about any of this. They had every opportunity to. But now, once I start talking about it and chronicling it on my channel, now what about this? What about that? And they said they were going to keep doing this to confuse the situation. But to me, it's starting to make a lot of sense because, again, once we start listening to what the stories, we start with a childhood story that might not have been right or may have been right, but in their minds was right. It goes to a story from 1995, 96. So we're talking about the 30-year-old story. Jump to a 1997 story. Jump to 2004, 5, not 6. So definitely a 20-something-year-old story. To its 2016 story, so a 10-year-old story. To today, which is, you've always been this, you've always been that. We need to teach you a lesson. And we moved here to teach you a lesson. That's what I've been trying to prove. I've been trying to prove this is about them coming here after the fact and trying to hurt me to get me to move. And when I refuse to move, then they're going to keep doing this until I just get up and leave. They said this is why they stay up all night. Okay, so now that we've gone over their stories, this is why something don't like me. I don't know. I think someone just said they can't speak for everyone. Again, now that we've heard them speak, let's go over this. These stories are always about children. It never starts out as me as an adult. And I think they use these stories to cover up them talking about kids. I also think that this is how this program was supposed to work. You get people to surveil people. They use the word just now, spies. But watch. I use the word watch other people. Then you spread gossip. And in the gossip, you start to they just said that I'm doing like stir the pot. So they just said stir the pot. That came from this direction. Stir the pot. I would say you start to twist things. You heard that voice. That was an actual voice. You start to twist things. And then once you start twisting things, they bring someone in, one of their people in, to take it to the next level. I'm going to end this video now, but I'll go over that in a new video. Thank you for watching.